everyone, so now that my latest dinosaur project is all done, it's time for some more monster fun, so let's make a Godzilla Minus One. During this YouTube video today, we'll be making a stop-motion skeleton, you could say, of Godzilla Minus One, I do say. From the tip of the tail to the snout, and even all those back plates that are placed all about. But as I sculpt away at this skeleton today, we'll be talking about Godzilla Minus One, I do say. So, I'm sure you have all heard the good news at this point, my Kaiju and Godzilla fans, that the recent trailer has been released for Godzilla Minus One. And honestly, it looks truly mind-blowing. Pun intended. The visuals, the tone, the thing just looks perfect, and I'm very pumped for this movie. And honestly, it looks truly amazing, a lot better than I expected. And it's kinda nice to see that Godzilla will be returning to, well, his basically former state. Do you think you'll be able to survive and fight? Well, let's find out and do a deep dive on this trailer. Because one big detail was revealed, so stay tuned to the very end to find out. Because it could make a kaiju-sized difference to your viewing experience. So let's not waste any more time, let's break down this trailer. Minus One Godzilla is directed by Takashi Yamazaki and is set in 1947, just after the end of World War II. And we have a new synopsis. In post-war Japan, a new terror has risen, Godzilla. Will the traumatized and devastated people of Japan be able to survive? Let alone fight back. So tensions will obviously be high between the Americans and the Japanese civilians, following the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Speaking of Japanese civilians, the trailer starts out with them running away from something, screaming for their lives. Continuing on from the teaser we saw a few months back. The production design here looks incredible, or perfect in my opinion. It really makes you feel like you're walking through Tokyo in the 40s, or at least what's left of it. One of the characters in the trailer asks, "What is it?" And another one replies with, "I don't know, it's something big." Then we get a peek at our first confirmed cast member, Yunosuke Kamiki, who seems to be on his knees on ground zero, helplessly looking up at something. We then cut to a scene with two train drivers, helplessly screaming at something blocking the tracks, which happens to be Godzilla. He then proceeds to throw a bus onto the railway tracks, which will inevitably lead to the train being derailed. We then cut to a scene with smoke filling the air just before Godzilla's snout peers out. If this is following an attack from the US Naval Forces, then I'm sure the crew is terrified that such a creature can survive a bombardment completely unscathed. And one other really cool shot, and yeah, you're probably gonna hear me say that a lot during this video. We see another character played by Minami Hayabe. She looks through the glass with utter terror, saying, "Is that Godzilla?" Which potentially tells us this isn't the first time Godzilla has risen from the sea and wreaked complete havoc on Tokyo. Or potentially the radios are warning the listeners of the attack by the King of the Monsters, telling them to evacuate, but it might be too late for this character. We then get an extended look at Godzilla when he bites into the train carriage, which most likely follows the scene from earlier when Godzilla throws the bus onto the train tracks. We also get a really epic shot of Godzilla using his tail as a weapon, slicing through all the buildings, crushing everything in its path, even the evacuating civilians. I think it's safe to say that Godzilla shows no remorse in this particular film. However, in spite of Godzilla's fury in this scene, at the front of the crowd, we see our lead character. And honestly, the CG looks really good, and yeah, I can be a little harsh on that stuff sometimes in particular because obviously I'm a stop motion guy, so yeah. Now, honestly, don't take that the wrong way. I do like CG, and it does take quite a bit of talent. But obviously, stop motion is what I admire the most because, well, let's be honest here. Our stuff is real. And if you take the, well, consideration as to how much time goes into stop motion or claymation in particular, well, I think it's safe to say which animator is generally suffering probably a lot more for their art form. Caffeine is my new best friend. At any rate, I'm being a little sidetracked here. Let's get back to the topic of, well, CGI animated Godzillas. Either way, Minus One Godzilla is definitely a big step up from Shin Godzilla, which already had pretty great VFX, considering the budget. And honestly, I really like that movie too. It was pretty good, again, because it was probably a little bit closer to the original origins of Godzilla, be it his design was, well, dramatically different to say the very least, but I definitely would enjoy making one at some point. But I haven't gotten any requests for that one yet. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. But I also love how in Minus One Godzilla, Godzilla appears to be a little smaller than, well, some of his other counterparts, but still big enough to cause some serious damage. It just makes, well, the attacks all the more personal at that point. Because some of these other larger Godzillas, well, in my honest opinion, are so large that you could basically simply get out of the way and not have to worry about it too much. Versus this guy, he might be looking right at you. With one scene in particular, with a well-placed foot stomp, we can see people ragdolling, which is honestly pretty scary, but yet kind of funny at the same time. Yeet. Basically because he is powerful enough to do that indirectly. We then get a look at some people hanging on to dear life on the top of a building as it comes crashing down. And honestly, this is a very compelling scene because you can tell they're trying to hold on to that edge with everything they've got. We see our characters running away, but I'm not sure how long they will survive. Because right behind them, quickly approaching, is Godzilla, crushing everything in his path. It almost seems like this Godzilla particularly enjoys tormenting the humans. We then cut to a bright flash of something exploding, reminiscent that of an atomic bomb blast, which is haunting to see itself, especially in a Godzilla film, where Godzilla is usually the physical embodiment of the destruction. We then get a glimpse of Godzilla towering over the ruins. And honestly, this shot looks really epic, gorgeous, but terrifying. People have stopped running, couples embrace each other, and they know there's no point struggling anymore. They're already dead. The blast completely levels all the buildings, flattening the city. I am curious as to what actually caused this explosion, though. This may be the result of Godzilla's atomic breath, but what is more likely is the Americans dropping another bomb. Probably making an attempt to kill him, but this is probably just gonna piss him off. And I think it's pretty obvious, but this film probably won't be shying away from, well, the heavy topics, pun intended. Because we then get to see the complete devastation of the result of the explosion. Scenes that were all too familiar in World War II. Up next, another shot of a battleship slicing through the water. And underneath, you can make the faint glimpse of Godzilla beneath the waves in his natural habitat. This definitely has some 2014 MonsterVerse vibes. Takashi has said he's a big fan of the MonsterVerse, and it's very cool to see him utilize some of that inspiration for some of the visuals. We then see more of the cast standing out by the ocean, potentially watching some naval warfare between Godzilla and the Americans. We then get a glimpse of some bodies which I'm guessing came from the shipwreck, considering we see other large metal equipment that seems like it's been washed upon shore. A character then says, "Why were we called out here?" as we see a wide shot of a steamboat out in the middle of the ocean, as our character peers out, possibly preparing for an encounter with the king of the monsters. We then see a United States government reel, which appears to be a presentation of what they know about Godzilla and how they believe they can stop him. This possibly includes a briefing on how to use atomic weapons, believing he can be stopped with conventional bombing. We see another character played by Hidetaki Yoshioka, as he says the government isn't telling the public, probably about the giant monsters that exist. Then it shows a map of the Japanese island from the teaser, as they signal Godzilla's approach. Our character then says someone's gotta do it, which shows that Japan will be taking matters into their own hands despite the American occupation. We then see two ships meeting, which looks like they're about to collide. And we see two of our main leads shouting at the other ship, so they may be relaying information or transferring cargo. We then see our lead again, this time covered in in black dirt. With pieces of clothing laying all around him, he may be the only survivor of this devastating explosion. That flattened Tokyo, and he screams in emotional pain. We then cut to another great shot of a battleship when Godzilla reaches out and grabs it. And honestly, I'm pumped to see this movie because wow, that was a good hook. In the next shot, it's best to almost play a slowed down version because if you look closely, it isn't an ordinary explosion. We see some sort of blue shockwave absolutely obliterate the battleship. This could be Godzilla's atomic breath blasting through the water like what we saw in Godzilla vs. Kong, or something completely new. And the light of the blast reflecting off the water is actually very pretty and, well, kind of cool. Either way, this battleship is being evaporated. Up next, we get a newly confirmed cast member, Garanosuke Sasaki, as he looks on in horror and states everyone is dead. Following this, we see the aftermath of the destroyed ship, which is washed upon shore with a huge hole in the middle of it, where the explosion made impact, as another smaller ship comes up to investigate. This situation tells me that this probably happens earlier in the film and no one knows what Godzilla is yet. We might even get a scene like in 1998 where the only survivor can say, Gojira, which makes sense when a character later on in the film knows his name. We then witness an argument between two characters played by Sakura Ando and a Japanese soldier, as he likely hid from the carnage to save himself, deserting his team. She calls him a disgrace, understandably upset considering she's probably lost everyone she knows. And the set design for this scene matches perfectly. Very much apocalyptic. This is crazy that we're getting this level of destruction in a modern-day Godzilla film. It looks great. I'm definitely excited. Then we see something you don't see every day, a flying ship clearly thrown by Godzilla into the bay. As he rises out of the ocean, we then see our lead character looking up at something buried under some rubble as he states, "That monster will never forgive us." It's interesting how they talk about forgiveness, because we all know the US atomic bombing, well, that was terrible, monstrous even. But it was in response to the atrocities committed by the Japanese during the war. This film might not only criticize the American government, but themselves as well, which will be a super interesting dynamic, especially for a Godzilla film. We then get the tagline, "Survive and fight," as Godzilla rises out of the ocean, ready to kill. One thing you might notice is that the bay has already been destroyed. This may mean this isn't the first time he has come ashore, or he has already used his atomic breath to obliterate the coastline. Similar to what he did in The Return of Godzilla, we then get the title card, Godzilla Minus One. Post-war Japan lost everything, but Godzilla arrived and then set everything from 0 to minus. And finally, we get a crispy shot of a scorched Godzilla, shrouded in black smoke, and he looks pissed. But what could have caused this? Perhaps this is the last scream of pain as he dies from a new form of oxygen destroyer. Or perhaps this is following an attack from a second monster that the trailer hasn't given away yet. We'll have to wait and find out. The last reveal from this trailer is that it will be playing in IMAX and 4DX. This is huge news. This isn't going to be some limited release. This is going to be a big event. So everyone, be sure to get your tickets at the biggest screen possible because that only seems appropriate for a kaiju-sized movie. The film comes out December 1st, which is not too far away, I do say. And I ain't gonna lie, that trailer has definitely set expectations fairly high. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. It looks action-packed, intense, thought-provoking, disturbing, frightening, provocative, and visually incredible. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what Yakizami brings to the table. From what I can understand, it's been a long time coming, since his Always Sunset 2 opening. It's also been confirmed that Naoki Sato will be the composer for the film, and has worked with Yamazaki on some of his older films. So consider him to be part of the director's dream team. And I look forward to hearing his score because what we hear so far is haunting. Godzilla Minus One can't come out soon enough, so what did you think of the trailer? Did it raise expectations for you? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to stomp on that like button, and perhaps subscribe if you're new and have your post notifications turned on so you don't miss any of the new Godzilla updates. Or perhaps share with your friends so we can grow this little claymation Godzilla community. However, that does conclude all of our Godzilla Minus One fun, at least for part 1, because in part 2, I'll be going into further detail for all of you, because I'll be sculpting away with plasticine clay, covering up this skeleton, you could say, whilst talking about Godzilla Minus One because this film looks ever so much fun. And it seems like a lot of you cannot get enough of these kaiju. So I'm here for you, to sculpt a way to have a world full of claymation monsters one day, which will be wreaking havoc, pun intended, on my little Lego city, you could say, with atomic farts someday. Now, the big question for the day is which Godzilla will be the king of the farts, I do say. Will it be Godzilla Minus One or the original one? Good lord, what has my life become? Because now it seems to be all about things coming out of Godzilla's bum. Although I must say it is a lot of fun, but I do spend several hours looking up Godzilla's rear. Oh dear. And I ain't gonna lie, there was one thing that I always did fear, and it was becoming somewhat like the SpongeBob guy. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with who that is exactly, but there's a guy on YouTube that commonly does, well, SpongeBob theories, and apparently he started doing short horror films and didn't take off and did a SpongeBob theory and it took off, and now he's known as a SpongeBob guy. Well, I'm now known as the goddamn Godzilla fart guy, and I can't seem to shake that image, so, yep, we're here, and yeah, I don't know what else to say at this point. Anyway, build rundown! On this kaiju-sized project today, we built a -1 Godzilla stop-motion skeleton, you could say, and the materials used for this project today: aluminum armature wire to make the base frame, oven-baked clay to make the bones, I do say, as well as all those, well, crazy backplates, one could say. Which took me over 16 hours, I might say. Which is why I'm behind schedule today, but that's okay because it's all for a -1 Godzilla, you might say. I should probably also say we used some steel wire for the joints today, as well as some tin foil to keep the weight down because we don't want our Godzilla to fall down. We also used some sticky tack, you could say, on the bottom of his feet, I say, to keep him upright today. And some plasticine clay to keep the joints from flopping around, I do say. But that's all the materials used today, so let's go over some of the tools used to make the skeleton, I do say. We used rakes to scrape the clay away, and sculpting knives to get the shapes, I say. And some rubber sculpting tools, cause without those I would probably be a fool. And a ball stylist, you could say, to make those eye sockets today. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and comment below what you think of the project. Perhaps leave a suggestion, share with your friends, and subscribe if you're new. Anyway, that's enough from me. Till next time, take it easy.